And with that, I'll say, Aneto, thanks for joining. I'm really excited to discuss the future of customer service with you. I feel like no one better in terms of, someone who's been in the weeds of it and figuring out kind of the different opportunities and flows. You want to introduce yourself a little bit and the company you've been working on, and, we can talk a little bit about, the world from there.
Yeah, certainly. Well, thanks for the opportunity, and thank you everyone for joining. So I'm Aneto. I'm one of the co-founders of ChatDesk, and we are a software company based out of New York. We've been around for 4 years, and our goals are all around helping companies scale their customer support efficiently. We work with large retailers like Gap and Abercrombie, but also work with a lot of fast-growing e-commerce brands, and now we're starting to work with fintech companies as well. My previous background, I was at Google for 7 years as a product manager, most recently working on voice search and the Google Assistant until I started ChatDesk.
I mean, do I remember correctly you started your career at McKinsey? Is that right?
Yes, sort of. So I started at Google actually in 2006, and then I went to McKinsey. I was a consultant, working in many different industries, and then I went back to Google for the second time. So I was there a total of 7 years. Yeah. Got
it. I remember that about you, and it's funny. I feel like you leave McKinsey off your resume most of the time, and I leave Bain off my resume. Although hilariously, for this conversation and kind of where we're coming from, it's reasonably relevant, right? As two consulting firms have done a lot of work, obviously, in the customer service space broadly. Yeah. Cool. So I think one of the cool things about your perspective on this and your companies, you guys have, which is unusual for a startup that's so young, like several different products, like specific products to help companies from a customer service perspective with, obviously quality and efficiency. Do you want to I'm kind of curious, do you mind telling everyone a little bit about like what those products are? And then I'm actually curious to hear from you a little bit, like how you chose those effectively as kind of your first suite or set of offerings. Because they're not like, just to preamble it, it's like, there's so many customer service platforms that are built as like this all-encompassing, like one and done, big monolithic things. And it seems like you've kind of taken the opposite approach where you have a few very targeted interventions, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a great insight. So in the world of customer service, there's kind of people, customer service agents, and maybe some of you are practitioners and you have large customer service teams, and there's people and processes that go along with that. And then there's tools, and there's all these different tools to help you deliver a great customer experience, which is what we all want. And when we came to this market, I talked to hundreds of practitioners, customer service directors and leaders at different companies, trying to understand like, what are the problems you have? And that's how we came to the tools that we developed. There's another, frame of thinking about developing tools, which is like, there's a tool like Zendesk or Salesforce, and you think, oh, I can build a better version of that. That didn't necessarily appeal to me. There's some companies that are doing that, and they're doing a phenomenal job, but that didn't appeal to me as a product manager, as a developer. I wanted to solve unique problems that were more like white space. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with the other approach, and there's some great tools I can recommend, but that's really the approach we took with the company is where are those gaps that aren't really being tackled that practitioners were complaining to us about.
Yeah, and so I'll call it the ones that, as I understand the three you're doing, which are obviously you have like a deflection tool or a tool that takes calls and routes them to text, right? Yes. You have a separate tool which basically does like analytics from customer requests and tagging on that, right? Where like people don't know how to categorize things or need better categorization. And then of course you have your dashboard, which basically helps companies scale up with quality, right? Like using, basically answering specific types of questions. So routing certain questions to kind of your cloud of technology plus people to like answer things. I mean, Obviously it's interesting to me because like with Fin Analytics and what we're building, right? We also are very targeted just at one piece, which is basically giving you deep operational insight into how how your teams are performing in closing tasks, as opposed to trying to build a monolith, so to speak. But yes. I mean, one, tell me if I've got your tools wrong, and then two, I'm kind of curious, like why those three, if that makes sense, or how you came to that.
Yeah, certainly. So you did a great summary, but there's probably some buzzwords in there, so I'll try and make it easier. So the problem I first experienced as a customer is waiting on hold. Maybe you guys have all had this experience. You call a brand, you call a company, and you're waiting on hold. And that was just gnawing at me, like, why am I waiting on hold? And how can we solve this, right? And probably some of you are customer service leaders, and you have all these calls coming in, and you don't have enough people. And that's actually the root of, the problem and root of the solution of all the tools we built. So we have a tool called Shift, which, as Sam mentioned, is for deflecting calls over to other channels like chat. Chat is very popular for some companies and is a very good experience for a lot of customers. So how can we deflect calls over to chat? Self-service. Everyone wants to have more self-service. You spend all this effort on your FAQs on your portal, but no one's really using it enough. How do you get those calls to go to self-service? Text message, Facebook Messenger, all these messaging channels are really blowing up, getting really popular. So that was our first tool, was shifting calls over to self-service and messaging.
And just to pause for a second, because I'm curious, please, anyone else jump in, by the way, like either just unmute yourself and say some stuff or like whatever you feel. I'd love to hear from other people, but I just push on that. Like one thing I always find interesting is this whole correlation versus causation, where people will say, okay, but like phone from a quality perspective is like my highest quality channel. Like people actually give it like the highest ratings, right? Like from an NPS perspective. So what do I deflect and what do I not deflect? And how do I think about that? It's always interesting to me because I always worry when people say that it's like a correlation versus causation, which is like the people who are willing to wait on the phone and then, assuming that you'll spend infinite time with them, you'll eventually solve their problem, like are more, it's kind of like, it's kind of like how, to make a silly leap, it's kind of like how, the pollsters got the election so wrong because like there's so like the polls are all based on the people who are willing to pick up the phone, right, and then talk to them. Like how do you think about what to deflect versus what not to deflect, and like kind of some of the concerns you've heard from your customers about that and kind of impacting quality and efficiency?
Yeah, you're exactly right. I think phone is a really high quality channel, and I'm really disappointed when I hear a lot of companies saying like, I don't want to talk to my customers. Like someone's reaching out to you, this opportunity to convert, retain, upsell, strengthen the relationship, whatever. So you should try to talk to them as much as possible. So what we say is if you have a good experience on phone, then for all means, don't deflect, like keep them there. But if you're just drowning, you're getting so many calls, getting so many voicemails, and a lot of those are really repetitive and a lot of those could be handled with self-service, then you're giving people the option. We're not saying force people to deflect, give people the option. Because a lot of people don't know that you have those. This is something that really surprised a lot of companies is people are not finding your phone number from your website, right? They're usually finding it from Google search. They type in company name, phone number, and then Google does a great job finding it somehow and putting it right there. And that's where they find it. So they don't know about all those things you have. Yeah. They don't know you have chat. They don't know you have an FAQ with the answers to this exact question. So they just go for the phone. And that's what we help companies solve, is in that deflection scenario. And there's a website that helps people get to it too, called Get Human. I think another thing we say is if you have a really good experience for that problem over that channel, then it makes sense to deflect people there. Like if people can check their order through chat, then, and they're giving you, 95% CSAT on that, then of course you should promote that option. And then the final thing to say is like when you deflect, you actually free up the phone lines for those people who need the phone. Let's say it's a demographic that is not as comfortable with things like chat, or maybe it's a billing issue which you can't handle over chat. Like you're freeing up the phone line for those types of more complex queries when you deflect. But we should deflect in all scenarios. Yeah.
So we find, so this is Jivan Pat here. Sorry, we find that we're trying to build out all this stuff that's going to help us deal with our customers, because right now we're 2 million calls a month contact center that handles pretty much everything over email and phone. What we've seen in success with both in the industry and then also in some of our own testing is that really high emotional transactions are things that are best for the phone, right? I have a problem with my account. I have this issue. I have that issue. I'm not going to make this payment, so on and so forth. Whereas transactional stuff, we really try to push to an automated channel because people in those situations just want to be in and out, one and done. And it's those high value, high emotion interactions where they want to talk to a person. Just our 2 cents or my 2 cents.
That's excellent. That's exactly right. It's awesome you're doing that.
No, Aneto, and this is Vince, and Javon and I actually work together, and we can go in where we're at, but it's nice to hear what you just said, right? The deflect piece and the different instances. You need to differentiate them between what should be on the phone and what should be via chat. I'm a firm believer, and I don't think there's a lot of people like us that are thinking this way. So it was really nice to hear you say that, because a lot of people think everything should just go to chat because millennials or our customers of today just want to chat, but it's not the truth. People want to talk to an agent, but there are some instances, those quick billing questions that could be done via chat, quick change payment dates, et cetera, could be done via chat, but there's places where you need those answers. Not everybody wants to use chat. So it's nice that you're able to find the differences.
I also think there's an interesting thing. I'm also a product guy by background, and so you kind of trace like, how did we get to this place, right? And like terms of like, how do we think about channels? And I think it's always really interesting that to date, when most people talk about omni-channel, right, what they really mean is like there's like 8 layers of inbound coming in, but you treat them all as like separate transactions. And I think what's interesting is the world we're going to, and there are certain services that are pushing towards this, is like, look, actually the idea that like you type in so-and-so's phone number and you get the phone number is good. Like, I think that's like, it should be easy to reach people on the channel they want to be reached, like they want to reach out to you on. But if you thought about the platforms and like they were more integrated around like, this is a conversation or a customer concept, right? And like literally I can call with them and text with them at the same time potentially, right? Like that's currently in most CRM setups actually pretty difficult to do. And like what you're seeing is this next generation of CRMs that thinks about omni-channel not as all channels in one dashboard for the agent, but as in like having a really strong concept of like, I can reach a customer on all channels and I want to match the channel to the type of interaction, which I think is super interesting. So I don't know, there's clearly a lot changing in the space.
I can move on to the second tool.
Yeah, do it. Sorry, I didn't mean to have the last word on that.
So we showed, these customer service leads, this shift tool. They said, okay, that's great. Do you have anything for tagging? So I researched this concept more. So almost all these CRMs you mentioned, there's a field in the CRM where you're supposed to put in tags. And all of them were complaining that my agents aren't filling in the tags, or they're not filling in them correctly, or other than inspection, they designed this really complicated workflow, like with these drop downs, and like they had a very sophisticated tagging system. And at the end, they would make these reports, which would go out like on a weekly or monthly basis. So I looked at this, coming from the Google side, I said, like, you don't have an automatic version of this, and none of them did. So I felt, we could build that. And so we built it. So we have an automatic tagging tool. And the insight we had was that all the conversations in an industry are topical. People complain to Uber the same way they do to Lyft. People ask questions to Hilton Hotel the same way they do to Hyatt. So you can build automatic tagging for an industry, right? Which doesn't require any data from any particular company. And so that's what we built. So we have like a food delivery model, a fintech model, a beauty model, a fashion model that can automatically categorize conversation. This is actually a free product. You can just sign up and use it on our website, which I can get into the reasons for that if you want to.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I mean, like, to me, this is another one. Like so your tagging was all based on what like the person asks on the line, right? Like we do other tagging that's been analytics based. We're saying like we try to figure out what the type of transaction was based on what the agent did. Like, i.e., they went to the billing page or the refund page, so like let's tag this refund. But it's similarly like I think you need all these signals to actually figure out what a case is, which is critical to like doing any sort of higher level work, right? In terms of like efficiency or quality, because we've come to the same thing, which is like it is shocking how manually tagged agent tag systems are full of junk, right? Which makes it really hard to even talk about basic concepts with confidence around like CSAT or NPS or like even handle times, because there's so much garbage in the data, right? And so it's just an interesting cleaning problem for sure. And like, for sure it's interesting. So why is it a free tool?
Yeah, because I'll tell you what happened. When we first launched it, we used to make reports for companies and we'll say, here's what we're seeing in the data. If you change this thing on your website, you're going to sell more in this way. If you change this thing in FAQs, you'll stop getting that question. We basically gave it to them on slides what the insights were from the data, and almost no companies used it. They'll say, oh, cool report. Can you send me this every quarter? But they didn't do anything with it. And so what I realized is there's different levels in an organization in terms of their sophistication around using this information. There's people who are not collecting it at all. There's people who are collecting it and sending out a report, and then there's people who are collecting it and doing something with it. And actually, unfortunately, there's a small fraction of companies that have the time, not because they don't want to, the time as a customer service lead, like you're drowning in work, in tickets, in personnel issues, in hiring, doing reporting is a nice to have. So the companies that could take advantage of it was where there was a team, maybe within the CX team, or there was a data team or an insights or analytics team whose job it is to disseminate reports and also do actions in the company. And those conditions, unfortunately, because of the role that customer service plays in a lot of the companies we work with, wasn't get funded or resourced to do that work. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's also interesting. I'll tell you honestly, like at Fin, we're fundamentally a platform that we're trying to help people understand better their operations and optimize them and like spot opportunities. And we do exactly what you're saying, which is we send out the quarterly reports, sometimes monthly reports that are somewhat stock and customized. And I will tell you, it's interesting. This actually was something we learned this week. My theory always on this was like that, like we knew leadership teams were using it. We knew product managers were acting on it. Like we worked pretty hard to make the data like super digestible and actionable. We have a bunch of dashboards in the tool. And my theory always was that those probably weren't that heavily used. So they're important to have. And like, they're kind of where we get our insights from, but really it's the package reports. We have someone on our team did finally, we should have done a long time ago, the analysis on like usage patterns of our actual dashboards as opposed to like the reports. And it's off the charts. It's like you find like the guy who's in charge of the knowledge base, who is actually in fact checking the knowledge base report to understand where time and effort is going in the knowledge base by case type, like every day, right? It actually was a really good reminder to what you're saying, which is like, once you help people with like a tool, they can kind of look at when they need it, like on their schedule, as opposed to delivering kind of the Bain or McKinsey style reporting. It can really change how people interact and how they drive insights.
Yep.
So talk to us about the third product.
All right, so the third product. So the first one's called Shift, the second one's called Trends, the free one, and then the third one is called Teams. And so the challenge we saw, I think this is more for kind of fast-growing companies, smaller companies, is they just don't have enough people. They don't have enough staffing, and the way that manifests is they're not 24/7. And if you're not 24/7 as a customer service team, what happens is you come in Monday morning and you have this mountain of tickets that you have to power through. That's a universal problem we had. So they didn't have enough people to respond to all those messages. And some of them are time sensitive. Some of them are pre-sales, where if you answer quickly, the person will purchase, right? And then some of them are cancellations, where if you don't cancel the order, then it's going to get shipped out and it's going to cause a refund return cycle. And I'm talking more in an e-commerce context, but those types of tickets that are time sensitive and are pre-sales, and you want to get to them faster. And for companies that don't have enough people, they have this challenge. So what Teams is enables you to scale up your customer support on demand. Some people like to call it like Uber for customer service. And I know this concept is a bit new, but we basically have a network of what we call super fans, people who are already fans of your brand, people who are customers, and we enable them to respond to the messages that you're getting.
And it's interesting. I mean, like there's a lot of like, so the first two products you guys have and like stories about the future of customer service, like deflection, get someone on the right channel, or like obviously better tagging. Like, I hope you don't take this the wrong way, but like I think for people who are like interested in technology and deep in the space, neither of those are like shockers. They're like, yeah, like we have to do this. There's a question of priority, but like no one's like, no, you shouldn't do that, right? The third, which is this kind of hybridization of like turning your super fans into support people, and then also like that you can maintain quality and help them actually create a good experience for customers, is like, I'll say a little bit more avant-garde. So I'm kind of curious, like, I want to also get the question in chat, but like, I'm kind of curious, like how you think about that product versus the others, how it sells in with people, like what leaps people have to go through to kind of use that one versus the other ones you guys are working on.
Yeah. I'd like to add a question to that, actually.
Yeah.
Like if you had a quadrant of brand affinity, like how much a company respects their brand and how likely they are to use something like this. If you've done any analysis on that.
Yeah, I'll answer that question. I'll answer that question in the chat. I think companies that respect their brand are more likely to actually even benefit from it, because our whole pitch is that the messages are always on brand and perfectly match your brand voice from day one. And we deliver on that promise. Because the messages that these super fans are sending out, they're not typing them. They're actually from previous responses to similar messages that you have responded to in the past. So let me break that down. Do you ship to Canada? And I think social media is a great example of this. Almost every brand that is advertising on Facebook and Instagram, they're getting messages through DM or Facebook comments, Instagram comments on those ads. And these are the types of messages they're getting. Do you ship to Canada? Why is it priced like this? Do you have this in stock? And what we found is most companies are not responding to those messages, actually, which is a huge missed opportunity. But when the super fans respond, they're actually using previous responses. So the answer to you just ship to Canada is, yeah, yes, we do, or no, we don't, and in exactly your brand style, with your emojis or whatever you want. So it works best with companies who care about personalization and want to have their brand voice be represented. Yeah.
Now,
That's awesome.
answer the question in chat about Directly, because I don't know them as well.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. So Directly is a great company, very impressive. I think it's very similar. I haven't used their product directly, not to use the fun, but the way I understand it is it has some similarities, but it's more designed for forums and communities. And the idea in Directly, as far as I know, is you get these questions in communities and forums. Let's say you're Xbox and you have this Xbox community, and the customers or the user are asking questions, and then you need someone to answer those. Of course, you should get Xbox experts to respond to those types of questions. So I'm not aware that it's a live system that's really designed for something like social media, where messages are coming in and you're responding, messages are coming in and responding, which is where we kind of focus. So we focus a lot on social media, on email, on chat, those kind of more live systems. I think another way we differ is kind of in the segment that we're focused on. So I think Directly, their customer base seems very enterprise heavy, a company like Samsung, as an example, a huge company. Whereas we actually service a lot of SMBs, a lot of fast growing brands who are having this like gap where they don't have enough people to be 24/7 and to be very responsive. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I think there's another quick question that Paul's asking you about: how do you incentivize the super users to do the work? You pay them money.
Yeah, exactly. So
With money.
This actually gets at the mission of the company. So the mission of the company is to help solve customer service and create jobs. And this is very timely right now because of the economic crisis during the pandemic. A lot of people don't have jobs, or people need extra income. And this is the type of work where you can work at home on your phone and get paid for working for brands that you love. And so there's a lot of people who want to do that, and they get compensated for that. And so our target is that people should be able to earn, $10 to $15 an hour doing this type of work. And it's pretty low effort because we give them the answers, actually, using the technology.
Yeah. So let's go back for a second. I mean, we talked a bunch about like your specific stuff, I think is interesting, but I also kind of want to because you're in the weeds of this stuff, you're a product guy by background, you care a lot about this segment of the world, which I do too, but like, I wouldn't say is like the thing in the Madison Square Garden, billboards necessarily, or whatever the right silly analogy is. Where's this all going? What is the difference between how customer service in the big picture is treated today versus like where you think we'll be in 10 years, right? Like, how's this going to work?
I love this question. So as I said, like our mission is to solve customer service and create jobs. And if you think about how we do customer service today, a phone call comes in, I answer it. An email comes in, I answer it. And when I answer it, I have to use all the things I've been trained on, what I know about the products, the policies of this company. But I'm pretty much doing that same interaction over and over. And that's part of why there's churn in the industry, right? And attrition, because it's repetitive and people don't want to do repetitive things, like where's the career growth and so on. So I think all this goes to like, how do you actually solve customer service? Well, I shouldn't have to call. I shouldn't have to email. You should know that I have a problem and you should fix it, right? And some of the best in-class companies we work with, they do this. There's a shipping issue. You know that all the packages are delayed. Why wait until the customer reaches out to complain and then you give an appeasement? Like, which is easier, right? And you know that there's a defect on the website, and a lot of times, unfortunately, customer service is a catch-all for problems that exist in the business or in the product or in the website. And I think where we go is from responding to messages to being proactive about actions, where the work of customer service becomes, here's what we think we should do with this customer. Do you agree that this is the action we should take? We should refund them, we should cancel, we should upgrade them, we should upsell them. And this is like a series of actions that are coming at agents, and that's where the human intelligence is needed.
So can I give I'm curious what you think of this. The way I've started phrasing this a lot is like, there's obviously customer service or customer support, and then there's like customer success, right? And customer success is more a function that exists more like B2B or enterprise environments right now, whereas customer service is what you do for more consumer scale things. But success is actually gold and set up ideally pretty differently, right? It's gold and set up on like revenue expansion, like retention, things like that, as opposed to just like basic queue metrics or like responsiveness or things like that. My theory is, and this is, I want to test this out with you because I kind of want to write something about this, but there's a good audience for it, is like, in 10 years, there'll be no such thing as customer service. We'll only be talking about customer success, right? And customer success will have gone from being like a B2B more niche-y thing to just like, yeah, like all your customers are relationships. You care about revenue expansion. You care about like how they feel about you. You care about retention. And like you have a whole bunch of tools you use, right, in order to drive that are very data driven but also like all about kind of the thing you actually care about, right? Not just like, triaging problems.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Do you agree with that? Do you think that's a good way to frame it?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think like
there is no customer service. It's only customer success.
I feel like that's a function of organizational maturity, though. Like when you become an organization where all the tooling is very sophisticated, can you like elevate your team? And that's what everyone wants to do. They want their customer support team to be doing that, but they're stuck with like the muck of all the tickets because all these other problems exist in the business. I think that's where we should go, but like it depends on organizational maturity. One other aspect I'll add to what you're saying though is like this device explosion, which is creeping up on us, but we don't realize it. Like today your TV breaks and then you try and find the phone number of like Best Buy so you can go over there and like get your warranty or something like that. But it's like email or phone is another channel to solve a problem with your device. But as all of our devices get connected, there's another theory of how this evolves, that you contact people in the moment with the thing that they're using.
So, but your TV is broken. How can you contact me on my TV?
Well, your TV has a way to, is internet enabled. Why can't you contact people through there?
I'm kidding. I got it. Yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah. What do you think is going to happen to platforms? I mean, like you and I think both are pursuing this theory that like in the future, when you think about every organization, they'll be building platforms together of different tools, right? And you'll have kind of a tool chain around it. There are obviously, to your point, others who believe in kind of like the monolith is what I'll call it. Like, what do you think is going to happen there? Like, do you like long term? Like, do you think that like there'll be another wave of like Salesforce Zendesk that are kind of highly integrated, and they'll certainly have APIs, but they're really like very big platforms? Or do you think the future is going to be more modular?
Both. I know that's a cop out. I think it's more about the personality. So the personalities we've met, like the customers we have, you have people who they want everything to be in one tool. And there'll always be those kind of people because it's easier from a vendor management standpoint, and from a purchasing and from a training, everything is in one tool. Then you have people who want best of breed, right? I want the best phone system, and then I want the best email client, and then I want the best chat. And nature of it, it's rare that a company can be best at everything. And on some of the companies you've mentioned who are building a monolith, like they suffer in some areas. Zendesk is an amazing tool, but they're not amazing at everything, right? Intercom is awesome at chat, but they're not amazing at everything. So that's kind of, because of that, you have people just choosing their camp. It's like choosing your tribe. Are you someone who wants everything in one place, or do you want to have the best of breed?
Fair enough.
That's what I was trying to get at my question, which is, it's still not clear to me, are you an integrated system? Are you modular and you work with others?
You're talking about Chat Desk?
Yeah.
We're modular.
Okay. And
yeah,
then
so
how are you integrating with these people? Are they being cooperative and saying, sure, we'll let you come in and replace our chat?
Also, we don't actually replace chat. Our name is a bit of a misnomer because we're not actually a chat app, but we connect to all the major phone systems. We connect to all the major CRMs. They're actually our partners. Like we do webinars with Zendesk and folks like that. So we connect to all the systems that everyone uses.
And the other aspect of my question was, do you build out these decision trees and response databases, or is that something you just don't do?
Yeah, so we don't do decision trees. So just to get everyone aligned what we're talking about, there was this wave in 2016 where everyone was launching these bot companies, and companies like ChatFuel and so on. And all of them have this editor where you can drag and drop a flow to make a conversation. It's kind of like an IVR tree, but for bots, right? And so I didn't personally like that approach, and I think it's been done, and there's some companies that do it very well. Our approach is you don't have to do any of that. You connect your channels, like you connect your CRM, you connect your social, and we import the previous messages that you've received and the previous responses you sent. And that keeps updating. So the answer to do you ship to Canada, maybe it was no 2 months ago, and this week it's yes, because you've launched that channel, and it just updates on its own. And the reason we're able to do that is because we're using the technology from Trends, which gets at, Sam, your original question, like, why did we build it in this way? So we understand what every conversation is about. I think we're one of the best companies in the world. Sorry if I'm just saying that, at understanding customer conversations. So when a message comes in, we understand what the conversation is about. So under the hood, there's NLP, but that's not exposed to the customer or to the agent or anyone like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, go ahead, Mark. Go for it.
I was going to say that going back to the modular approach,
Yeah.
You're not going to be the only company that's ever going to do that. So do you imagine, I'll use the word open standard, so that big companies can maybe even try out different solutions so that somebody else can say that you're the best in the world. It's kind of meaningless for you to make the claim, but if you've been compared to 4 other competitors, and so to do that, that would imply that there are now a standard set of hooks and sockets and APIs that a multi-vendor world would grow up around us. I like what you just said, but I don't think you'll be the only company doing that.
I didn't say we're the best. I think one of the best. So
okay, all right.
Not that pompous.
but do you see some open standards around this?
Maybe, but I don't know.
APIs,
Like, we're not at a stage where we can set the standards. I think probably the major platforms like a Salesforce or someone like that probably could set those, and we'll be happy to follow those. But I haven't seen that kind of collaboration in the industry so far.
I think like people won't. Yeah, I think it's an interesting question about how open standards evolve in a space like this, because and like where the key differentiation is. I mean, my sense is, and like it's an interesting question. It's a little bit different than consumer stuff, is my sense, because like everything is about like the vendor relationship, and like to your point about best in breed versus all in one. Like that question actually recurses, right? You can talk about it at the platform layer. You can also say like, all right, well, I need the best in breed interpretation of what the customer is or the whatever, and I need the best in breed interface for managing my super fans or whatever. So there's always an interesting question about like what gets packaged together. I think one thing you mentioned I want to call out, because I think it's also a really important part of the future of customer service. And there is kind of I think a debate going on about this, is like, I'll call it bottoms up versus top down, right? So the bottoms up version, what you're talking about, is like, well, we're not going to try to define the correct answer to everything. We'll see what answers have been given before and select from that set, and that becomes the best. Or I'll give you an example in process mapping. So Finn, we do a ton of process mapping, and interesting, people always ask like, okay, so do I tell you what my process is, and then you evaluate whether people are following? Like, well, in theory, you could use our tool for that, but really what we're designed for is, given a ticket type, this is what actually happens, right? This is what the top 20% by NPS, CSAT, like, close resolution time, whatever looks like. That is your best practice, because your agents, your team might actually know better than you do what should be happening, like they frequently do. And like, let's manage to kind of the best demonstrated actual practice versus like some abstractly designed, answer, right? So I'm kind of curious, like when you think about like those two models of the future of operations, one is like you have people, they're doing their best, they're giving, you have the best responses and you're tracing up from the bottom, versus like you're using tools to better define the answer. Like, do you have a sense of like how those things will interplay in the future?
That's a tough one. I don't know if I have an answer to that.
Fair enough.
I think what you can do with like what we're doing is you can raise everyone up to the best agent, which is I think what you're getting at. Like, what are the best agents doing, and how does everyone mirror that? And when you leave things too much to chance, like then you're gonna get that variation. I think that's what we all want, right? We want consistency in our experiences. As a customer service manager or a marketing manager, you want to say like, here's what I think our customers should experience, and you're hoping that everyone can match that. But then you're leaving things up to like problems with the tools, problems with training, hiring the right people. There's too much variability, and you want to reduce variability, and that's what like tools like Finn can help you do, or some of the things we're doing. Yeah.
Fair. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
I want to answer some of these other questions here, and actually, I had one question that came out of one of these questions. So someone said marketing should manage ops if they run their own brand experience, and we see this like tug of war happening in a lot of companies we work with. There are some companies marketing owns customer support, and some companies like ops owns customer support, and the outcomes you get are different as you got. Like if you go for ops owning it, you have like an efficiency focus, And if you get marketing owner, you're going to have an experience and brand and personalization as a focus. Like, what do you think is the answer to that, Sam? Like, who should own customer support?
I mean, it's interesting. I kind of just go back to this thing, which is what is long term. I think there's a short term question, which has a lot to do with the nature of your brand and your company and what type of support I mean, there's a lot of like short term. In the biggest picture, though, if you ask abstractly, for me, customer service is about LTV optimization for your customers, right? Like, you're basically there. And the reason you're there, right, is to basically do a really great job of saying, when people want to talk to you, you should have a really good sense of who they are, what they need, and then be helping them get done what's going to help them create the most value of that relationship, right? And so to me, whether that's sales that owns it, right, whether that's product, like how you think about that, I think is like a very conditional thing. But I do think that there's this leap, which is hard, and I think we're not there yet as an industry of getting to, which is just like the real, people talk about like what they hold customer service accountable to, and the metrics are usually like very customer service oriented. I think we'll get to the point where we'll actually think about it as like an LTV impact, right? Which will really change things. But in the end of the day, I think maybe I would say in conclusion to your question is like, in the short term, it's whoever is closest to the metrics like being impacted by is who should own it, right? Like, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I was going to add one thing. So I work at Lyft, and we have in-person customer support, phone, chat, email, like the whole gamut. And we've been looking at in-person as a, how do we drive incremental driver hours by that in-person support, and leveraging that very differently than the chat. And so each channel has different metrics and what you're trying to optimize with those versus one customer support.
Yeah, and so then the interesting question becomes in terms of how you organize a company, right? Like right now, customer service, which is oriented around like the hiring and managing of people, like kind of usually sits in one group. Is there a world in which actually what you're describing is that like different teams all have customer service wings effectively that are like matched up to their goal set, right? It might be that maybe the future of customer service is that it actually isn't even a department, right? Mm-hmm. It's like a set of capabilities, right? And those capabilities maybe have common tools or things like that, but they're actually spread throughout the whole organization, right? And like,
that's exactly how we're structured.
Yeah,
like,
that makes sense. And like in the future, you know, if you're like a GM and you're like a leader responsible or something, it's like, you're like every day, you know, in quarterly planning, you're like, look, I need 5 new engineers and 100 new service agents. And like, here's my justification for why, right? So it's not the customer service team advocating for itself. It's literally like product leaders advocating for allocation, just as you would any other type of allocation.
Yeah. I think tools become sort of the opportunity there, where then each team is making decisions on what's the right tool, and there's not a back-end integration. So we're not fully understanding the customer journey through all the different channels. So that's what we're working on now, is like, how do we integrate so that to the customer it's seamless which channel they end up in when.
That's a really cool thought, because I think that also then relates to this idea, which I think is, for what it's worth, you always have when you have a hammer, everything's a nail, right? So I'm like, oh, this works perfectly for the future of thing. But like, where you're like, okay, yes, you're gonna have a lot of different tools, different teams, customer service gets distributed out across an org. But if you actually want to do LTV optimization long-term, right, and you actually do want to have a sensible experience over the whole thing, you do need an integrated picture of the customer, and both for the sake of the customer as well as the sake of the business, right? And so that becomes a whole discipline in and of itself, right? You know, the more service isn't just like a single phone number with 5 answers. Right. That's a cool thought. Thanks for sharing.
There's all these questions about training, so I'll try and answer them. So the way we think about it is training is necessary because you have this person you hired and they don't know much about the products and the policies. And so you have to get them up to speed to the level that you require before they can start responding. And for some companies, that's 2 weeks. For some companies, that's 3 months. And there's usually this like shadowing exercise that happens where there's an experienced person who's paired with a junior person. So we tried to turn that whole concept on its head. First of all, if you get super fans, they're either very knowledgeable about the company, the products, or at least the industry. So there's already some base knowledge that's there. So what do I mean by a super fan? Like we have a company called Cabinet Parts, and they sell, cabinet hardware and hinges and doorknobs. And the questions are very technical. Like,
one would hope they don't sell sneakers.
so you obviously need to know the products and know this company to be able to answer that. So that's the kind of people that we're able to find. So that's the first piece. The second piece is hiring is just like, I go through all these interviews and then I start training the person. So we have people practice. They practice on these previous messages and they get scored continuously whenever they use the platform. So there's not a separate QA process. They're always being QA'd. So you can, as a company, select from the top performers who are already super fans of your brand. And that for us was also an innovation in hiring because it takes away like the bias, it takes away the resume. Like, I don't know how to make a resume. Like, I don't know anyone in the companies. If you love this company and you can practice and you score well, like, you can work on the platform. And so that already takes away like a lot of the work that's needed in training. Now, another question that came in, okay, well, what about account access, right? And that's where like it's more traditional, where we have the company walk us through their workflows. Okay, when you cancel an order, you have to do it in these 3 systems. Otherwise, it doesn't reflect and the order will get shipped out. Like, someone actually has to walk us through that. So it's more manual. Like, we'll make a video of that and we'll walk all the chat desk experts through that and make sure they have it, and they still do shadowing. But that's actually taken off the plate of the company. That's why I said this is better for companies that are fast growing, because they might not have the time to keep walking agents through, and then they churn and you have to walk them through. Like, chat desk handles that part of it, the hiring, the training, the scheduling. We're still doing training, but it's using some of the techniques that we've used. Yeah.
Cool. So listen, we're over 45 minutes, and I try to keep these reasonably short because it's the middle of the day for people, and like I'm sure people are trying to like get stuff done. I think if anyone else has does anyone have like a burning question they want Aneto to answer before we wrap up, and I think we can go from there. Anyone want last licks? Cool.
I have one thing to say. So if it's a contextually driven world where you understand the context of how this person comes in, that will then route them to the right solution for CX.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah. Context is hard, but yes, context is king. Cool. Well, Aneto, I want to thank you for this conversation. I really enjoyed it. I hope others on the call did as well. It's just always fun to kind of take a quick, lunch-ish break and get to chat about this type of stuff. I'll be sending this around if anyone wants to share it. And again, if anyone wants to reach out to you, I assume, I don't know, what's the best way to reach you?
Aneto at Chat Desk, or reach out on the website. Check out the free tools. Always happy to chat and help out.
I'm just gonna Google call Chat Desk and see what happens.
Yeah.
But no, I appreciate it, everyone. Anyone wants to follow up, this is great. And thanks for taking the time out of your days.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.